Hayom Yom Shishi, Hayom Yom Shishi, Machar Shabbat, Machar Shabbat, Shabbat, Menucha. Machar Shabbat, Machar Shabbat, Shabbat, Menucha. Hayom Kulam Ovdim, Hayom Kulam Ovdim. Machar Shabbat, Machar Shabbat, Shabbat, Menucha. Machar Shabbat, Machar Shabbat, Shabbat, Menucha. Achama merosh, Ailanu Nisareka, Bo'u v'netzeh, Likrat Shabbat Hamaleka, Hinei yoredet Hagdosha Brocha, Ve'ima Malachim, Tzva Shalom u'Menucha. Bo'im, bo'im, Hamaleka. Bo'im, bo'im, Hakala. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaShalom.
Just have to put on a tallis. Sorry. Yes. Hi, Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos. It's a great pleasure for us to be bringing you a Shabbat service from Temple Shalom here in Pompano Beach. Myself, Rabbi David Mark, and our wonderful cantor, Javier Smolars. So our portion for this Shabbat is Shmini, and I really like Shmini. I don't like it because nice things happen in it. Quite the contrary. But it is realistic. Most of Leviticus, most of Vayikra is straight on offerings. They have all kinds of offerings, korbanot. Of course, in English, we generally call them sacrifices. But sacrifice it has such a negative sound to it. For example, I sacrificed everything for my diet, or the pitcher threw the base runner did a sacrifice play in order to let the other players steal home. So sacrifice in English has a generally negative connotation. In Hebrew, the word for sacrifice is korban, from the root karov, meaning nearness, because our ancestors felt that whenever they made a sacrifice, they were getting nearer, they were getting closer to God. That's a very simple psychology if you think about it. I've often compared it to if you've got a child who has 2 apples, and the child says, I've got 2 apples, I want to thank God for my apples, I want to give one of the apples to God. Now, how does God get his apple? I know you're probably thinking you bake the apple. That's what my Nana used to do, and she was famous for her burnt baked apples. They were only slightly burnt. I don't know if your grandmother did this, but she would cook it in no-cal ginger ale with raisins, and then when she served it, here it comes, she put in a nice, healthy dollop of light and lively cottage cheese. That was like, because she was always on a diet, let her rest in peace. Anyway, you don't bake the apple. You don't roast the apple. What you do is you're obligated to give 10% of your produce, of your cattle, of your grain to God's representative, who is the Kohen, the priest. And they're the Kohanim and the Leviim. The priests and the Levites obviously came from the tribe of Levi. So that was their psychology. It was really a very nice thing, the idea of, I have this, I'm going to give some back to God. As a matter of fact, they were obligated to give the ma'aser, or the meiser. The ma'aser comes from the root eser, meaning 10% of their produce, 10% of their income. And there are some churches to this day who do the same thing. They tithe their members. Now, this is the very first, the Chanukah Habayit, that is the dedication of the sanctuary in the wilderness, which was really a tent with an altar in front of it and another one on the inside. And inside the tent was also the menorah with a 7-branched candlestick, as well as the Aron Kodesh, not the Holy Ark behind me, which contains the Torahs, but rather the portable Ark, which we last see on the Arch of Titus being carried off into exile. Some folks think it's in the Vatican somewhere, and I really couldn't say one way or another. But it's the time for the dedication of the Mishkan, that is God's sacred dwelling place in the wilderness. And what happens is that there's 7 days for it to be inaugurated, and on the 8th day, Aaron and his sons begin to officiate as Kohanim, as priests. This had never been done before, and I'm not going to say Jewish history, I'm going to say Jewish tradition. Significantly, he has 4 boys, Nadav, Avihu, Elazar, and Itamar. Nadav and Avihu are the elder sons, and they are designated. They've been practicing and putting on their robes and understanding where the different sacrificial offerings go, because it wasn't just animals. It was grain, it was fruit, and it was also a mixture of spices, which were meant to be the incense, because you want to make a pleasant odor before the Almighty. But something goes wrong, and it is deadly for Nadav and Avihu. They offer before God what is called in the text Eish Zara, which means strange fire. It made an impression on writers and scholars. I recall that in Paradise Lost, John Milton writes about strange fire as well. We don't know what strange fire was, but I will say this. God strikes them dead. There's a clap of thunder and a flash of lightning. We don't know how exactly it happens. But when the smoke clears, Nadav and Avihu are dead, and Elazar and Itamar carry them off the sacred precincts. Aaron is silent. He's in total shock. In my book, the Torah book, I created a wife for Aaron, because it's one thing for one parent to react in complete silence, because frequently that, sadly, if there is a sudden death, if there is a terrible tragedy, people don't know what to do or say, and they stand there silent. But in this instance, I created a Mrs. Aaron, Celia, and she has the 4 boys. She raised them. She has 3 daughters as well, because in those days you had large families. And by the time she's rushing with her daughters to the Mishkan, to the sanctuary, and she gets there too late, and her sons are already dead. Now she refuses to accept the justice of God. She absents herself from the camp. Now again, this is all from my head. This isn't Torah. Oh, it's a derivation of Torah. It's sort of an extended drosh. She moves out of the camp. She didn't have very much good to say to Aaron either. And she dwells in a black goatskin tent, just sitting there and wondering why the sovereign of the universe could have been so cruel to her as to take away her 2 older boys. The only people who come to see her are Miriam, that is, of course, her sister-in-law, and Miriam is a comfort to her, she says. She sings to her from outside the tent, and they cry together. The other person who comes, and again, this is a complete invention of me, Korach. And how do we know Korach? He is the one who, a number of Parshiot Torah portions later, will foment a rebellion against Moses and Aaron. And I made Korach the brother of Celia. So, you kind of keep it all in the family. Anyway, getting back to this, the rabbis who studied these verses for centuries had no idea why exactly the boys had been killed. But they were fascinated by the strange fire. The incense was made up of different ingredients, obviously, and you had to get it exactly right. They made a mistake. You know how it is. It's your first appearance doing whatever role society or your parents have designed for you, and you're trying so hard to get it exactly right. But something goes wrong. It's built into the system. Anything complicated and detailed, that's explanation number one. They, shall we say, blew it on the incense. Number two is this, and I don't know if this is as common as it used to be. If you're nervous prior to a speaking engagement, and I've never done this, thank God, but some people do, you take a little drink of alcohol because it makes you less nervous, it settles your mind, you're able to get out there and do what you're supposed to do. Now, without naming names, my very first full-time pulpit in North Carolina, what happened was, it was the High Holy Days, and I had a volunteer. And this was a person, a scholar, very well designated, and so on and so forth. And he davened, okay. But the point is that he confided in me that he had a thermos. This was obviously only for Rosh Hashanah. He had a thermos up on the bima. And what was in the thermos? It was tea, half tea and half whiskey. Well, I had to speak to the powers that were, because you're not supposed to daven. You're not, especially to lead people in prayer, if you're not in complete control of your abilities and your senses. So the rabbis figured that because it says later on, right after the incident of the strange fire, that you are forbidden to bring alcohol into the precincts of the sanctuary. Clearly, Nadav and Avihu had a nip or two before they went out there to lead the service. And that is the very dramatic episode that takes place in this. The next one is much more homey, much more common. Keeping kosher. Every Jew, in some way, shape, or form, keeps, I don't mean they keep kosher, but they're, to some extent, they're aware of the kosher laws. So at least they know, when they sit down to have whatever meal it is, exactly what laws they're breaking, okay? And I'm going to finish my remarks with the famous tuna fish question. This is when I was just about to graduate from rabbinical school, and I was looking for a pulpit. And I found a pulpit in Brooklyn, the city of religion, and I'm going to call it B'nai Bingo, because they had two buildings with a passageway in between, and they were set up for bingo in both buildings. So in terms of religion, they were very devout bingoists, and they gave me an interview. And the remarkable thing about rabbinical pulpit interviews is you never know what they're going to come up with. Usually these are pretty much cut and dried questions. They probably go back to Moses in terms of seeing if he was fit to lead the Israelites. But this particular one, okay, you have to keep in mind that in the great borough of Brooklyn, there are many, many, many diners. And these diners will serve you anything 24 hours a day. I'm not saying it's kosher, but it's varied. And they said to me the following question: Rabbi, if you ate a tuna fish sandwich in a non-kosher Greek diner, would you wear your yarmulke? There's no way you can answer that right. Because if you say, why, yes, I will eat my tuna fish sandwich and wear my yarmulke, then if one of your congregants is looking through the window and he says, oh, my rabbi is eating a tuna fish sandwich in the diner, it must be kosher, and he'll go in and have a hamburger. Now you're causing your congregant to sin. On the other hand, if you take off your yarmulke, put it in your pocket, and eat your tuna fish sandwich, the same congregant will look through the window and say, what kind of rabbi is this? He eats with his head uncovered. How can he do that? And it's a non-kosher diner, even though tuna fish is like the Switzerland of Jewish kashrut. So the end result was I didn't know how to answer the question, and I didn't take the pulpit. And the rest, as they say, is history. Thank you so much. Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos. And we do have a Holocaust memorial service coming up this Wednesday. Cantor and I are going to broadcast it with the help of our dear friend and fellow congregant, Doreen Christopher. And that's going to be Wednesday at 5. 5. Yes, 5 o'clock. Thank you so much.
Shabbat Shalom, page number 13. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. בואכם לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון. מי מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ברכוני לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון. מי מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. צאתכם לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון. מי מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. יא יא לה 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 יא לה 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 יא 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 לה 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 יא לה 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 יא לה 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 יא לה 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 יא לה 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 יא לה 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 לה. And on page number 14 we sing together Yedig Nefesh Avarakaman Meshok Abdak El Resonach Yarot Abdak Kemo Ayar Igishlach Haber Muladarach Yeravlom Yedidotek Minofer Etzov Vechol Tav Yai Lai 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 Yai Lai 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 Yai Lai 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 Yai 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 Lai 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 Yai Lai 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 Yai Lai 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 Yai Lai Lai Lai. Let us sing to Adonai, let us rejoice in our Creator. Page number 15. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, Adonai. Naria, naria, letzuri shenu, nekadra fana betodah. Naria, naria, letzuri shenu, izmiro naria lo. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, Adonai. Ki gadol Adonai,
Reading silently to the bottom of 15.
Arba'im shalakut bedor va'omar Hameto eleva v'mem lo yadon derachai Asher nishvati be'api Ihim yevor el menuchati. 16. Shirul Adonai shir chadash Shirul Adonai kol haaretz Shirul Adonai v'chu shebo Masru miyom leyom Yeshuatu Sapru bagoyim kevoto V'chol ha'amim niflaotav Migadol And in the bottom of the page, we finish this psalm that is very happy with the music. Yeah? So we started doing this like a flamenco dancer. And now we are going to clap again with Refu'ahShelemah, the last 4 lines. Refu'ahShelemah, 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 ותגל הארץ, Refu'ahShelemah, השמיים, Refu'ahShelemah, השמיים ותגל הארץ, ירם הים, ירם הים, ירם הים ומלואו, ירם הים, ירם הים, ירם הים ומלואו, ישמחו השמיים, השמיים,
ישמחו השמיים,
השמיים, ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ, יעלו שי וכל אשר בו, אז ירננו כל הצייר לבני אדוני קיבה לשפוט הארץ, ישפוט הבל וצדק ועמים באמונתו. Okay, we are now on page number 19, in the bottom of the page. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו, רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו, כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו, כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו, רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו, רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו.
All right.
Lechadodi on page number 21 and 22. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, perei Shabbat lekavela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, perei Shabbat lekavela. La lecha dodi, likrat kala, perei Shabbat lekavela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala. פני שבת נקבלה, שמור וסחור ודיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד,
אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ותפארת ולתפילה, לה 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 לה.
לך דודי קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. פעם לקראת שבת
לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה מראש מקדם ניסוחה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תפילה, לה 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 לה.
לקראת קלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת Kala, Pele Shabbat Nekavela. Let's continue. Migdash Melech Il Melucha Kuvitzei Mitoch Hafekara Rak Shevet Velekavaka Uyakabol Alaykem La 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 Lechadodi Ligad Kala Pele Shabbat Nekavela Lecha Dodi Ligad Kala Pele Shabbat Nekavela.
All right, please rise wherever you are. We'll turn to 22. We've got the fourth stanza. And we turn to the door through which the Sabbath Queen will enter.
Boi beshalom matir balav, kam besimcha ubetzora, tokemu neyam seula. Boi chala, la 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 lecha dodi, nigrad kala. Pele Shabbat lekavela, lecha dodi, nigrad kala. Pele Shabbat nekavela la 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 lecha dodi ligad kala Pele Shabbat nekavela lecha dodi ligad kala Pele Shabbat nekavela. So if you did sing the lecha dodi and if you did dance the lecha dodi, make a like, so we can know.
Right, yes. Yes, please.
Okay, page number 23.
23, Psalm for Shabbat.
Mismor shir leyom Shabbat, tov leodod l'Adonai, ulesamer shimcha elyon, ulesamer shimcha elyon, leagid baboker chazdecha.
Okay, as a Hebrew school student once said to me, we will now read responsibly. Okay, are we good? Because one time we stopped the service because people didn't like that the tablecloth is a little off. Okay. All right, reading in the English. It is good to acclaim Adonai, to sing your praise, exalted God, to affirm your love each morning, your faithfulness each night, to the music of the lute and the melody of the harp. Now you might wonder why they have a lute and a harp. Well, the navel in Hebrew is a 7-stringed harp, and the chinor is a 10-string harp. And you may remember the chinor from the famous song of the Six-Day War. That is Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, Jerusalem of Gold. And we'll do the last couple of quartets. The righteous shall flourish like the palm tree. They shall grow tall like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they will thrive in the courts of our God. They shall bear fruit, even in old age. They shall be ever fresh and fragrant, to proclaim Adonai is just, a rock in whom there is no flaw.
Yasha
Baruch Hu on 28. You may rise. I'll open the doors.
Baruchu et Adonai Mevorach.
Baruch Adonai Mevorach Le'olam Voed.
Baruch Adonai Mevorach Le'olam Vaed.
Amen. You may be seated.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidbaro mari barabim בחוכמה פותח שערים ובגבורה משנה עיתים ומחליף את הזמנים ומסדר את הכוכבים במשמרותיהם ברקיע כרצונו בורא יום ולילה גולל אור מפני חושך וחושך מפני אור ומעמיד יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאו ושמו אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני עמרי ברבים. Page number 29. אהבת עולם בית ישראל עמך אהבת תורה ומצוות חוקים ומשפטים אותנו לקנאתך על כן אדוני אלוהינו ושוכבנו וקומנו נשיח בחוקך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגד יומם ולילה ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל.
That's a wonderful bracha that the cantor just read, just sang. Blessed are you, Lord, who loves his people Israel. And that brings us to the question of the chosen people. A lot of Jews don't feel comfortable with the idea of the chosen people. But the point is that any religion worth its salt tells its followers, you're important because you belong to the XYZ religion. Jews are the only ones who seem to be embarrassed about it. And what's very important is that, after all, we have certain obligations, so much so that when I was a kid, they explained the Am HaNivchar, the chosen people idea, to us in a negative sense, which I think is very Jewish. They said that, God forbid, the Jews are expected to be ethically upright and moral as well. Otherwise, God does hold us to a higher standard. That is why I remember when I was a kid, when my father was reading the New York Times, which he did very religiously, he would look for these stories that mentioned Jewish names, because it was known as Jews behaving badly, or a shanda for the Gentiles. I would say more like it was a shanda for the Jews, because Jews, as I said before, are held to a higher level of behavior. And we'll continue now on page 30 with the Shema. We'll cover the eyes. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Voed. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And these words which I command you this day you shall take to heart. Teach them diligently to your children. Recite them at home and away, night and day. Bind them as a sign upon your hand, as a reminder above your eyes. Inscribe them upon the doorposts of your homes and upon your gates. We'll read silently the paragraph at the bottom and also the tzitzit paragraph at the top of 31. Adonai Elohechem Emet. And the cantor will continue in the middle of 32.
Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la. La 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Vihi kamocha, ha'elim Adonai. Vihi kamocha, nehedar b'kodesh. Torah tehilot tosefele. Torah tehilot tosefele. Ya la 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 la, ya la la la. La 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 la, ya la la la. Ay la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ay la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Malchutecha rahu banecha, v'hokea hayam livnei Moshe. Ze'elianu ve'amru, Adonai nimlok le'olam va'ed. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la, ya la la la. Ay la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ay la 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 la, ya la la la. Vene baruch Adonai diako, u'ki'ano miyad chazak mimeno. Baruch ata Adonai, Gal Yisrael.
Right, as we've done before, in the midst of this terrible plague, we do pray for Refu'ahShelemah, the quick and speedy recovery of all those who are afflicted. We pray for the continuing health of the caregivers, the EMTs, the nurses, the doctors, the technicians, folks working in the laboratories to try and come up with a cure and a vaccine. We pray for our leaders as well. And of course, we pray for our brothers and sisters in the state of Israel, that they are also dealing with the virus. And I want you to think of anyone you know who is not well and keep their name in mind. And read the paragraph together. Help us, Adonai, to lie down in peace, and awaken us again, our sovereign, to life. Spread over us your shelter of peace. Guide us with your good counsel. Save us because of your mercy. Shield us from enemies and pestilence, from starvation, sword, and sorrow. Remove the evil forces that surround us. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings, O God, who watches over us and delivers us, our gracious and merciful ruler. Guard our coming and our going. Grant us life and peace now and always. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Praise to you, Adonai, who spreads the shelter of peace over us, over all his people Israel, over Jerusalem and the entire world.
Amen.
Os aleinu sukat shlomecha, Baruch atah Adonai.
Baruch Shemo.
Aporei sukat shalom aleinu v'al kol hamo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim, v'al kol ha'olam kulo. Amen. And on 34, Cantor will sing the V'shamru.
V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ואני אומר בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם וביום השביעי שבת בנפש שבת בנפש שבת בנפש ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
Please rise for the Half Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שם רבה ועלמא דיברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחיי כל יום וכל וחיי לכל בית ישראל בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב מימרו אמן יהי שמי רבם מבורך לעולם ולעולם ולעולם יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשיו לילה מכל ברכתה ושגינתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תמידה מעמה אמרו אמן.
The Amidah, the standing silent prayer, is 35b and concludes on page 38, after which you may be seated.
Yala la 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 yalona. Yala la 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 svatay tiftach. Yala la 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 yofi yagir. Ufi yagir teilatecha. Yala la 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 yalona. שפתיי תפתח, יופי יגיד. grant true and lasting peace to your people Israel and to all who dwell in earth. For you are the supreme sovereign of peace. May it please you to bless your people Israel and all the world in every season and at all times with your gift of peace. Praise are you, Adonai, who bless the people of Israel and all the world with peace. Shalom Rahav al Israel Amcha v'al kol yoshvei tevel. Shalom Rahav al Israel Amcha tasim le'olam. Ki ata hu melech hadod lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech hadod lechol hashalom. Shalom Rahav al Israel Amcha tasim le'olam. Shalom Rahav al Israel Amcha tasim le'olam. Tasim le'olam. Tasim le'olam. Page number 48. Kaddish Shalem.
Full Kaddish, please rise. 48.
Yitgadal v'yitgadal Hashem merhaba. Bi'alma dibra chiudo v'yamlik malchut v'chayechol v'yamechol v'chayechol d'Israel. Ma'ala v'izumangari v'gimbro. Yerish me'rava memorach. Eolam v'yamaya. Yidvarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'dra v'drase v'yitar 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 v'shimei kudesha. Leila v'nikol v'nichata v'shiratat v'shuvekata v'nikmata v'yamar v'yimbro. תתכבד אצל הדורות לכל ישראל, כלמרות משמיה וגימברו. יגיש למרבה משמיה וחיים עלינו על כל ישראל וגימברו. עושה שלום במרומה, ויעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי תבל, וגימרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומה, ויעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי תבל, ואימרו אמן.
All right, every year I go a little dippy looking for the Omer because it's obviously in the book, but it's not on the table of contents. Oh, there it is, 55, the counting of the Omer. All right, and the Omer is, of course, very significant. Unfortunately, there's nothing left these days but the count because the temple has not yet been rebuilt, which will happen when Mashiach comes. But what was happening is this. The Pesach, we escaped from Egypt, and 7 weeks later, we arrived at Mount Sinai and got the Torah from God. Now you can believe that we got only the 10 Commandments or the entire Torah, whatever it is. But the point is that it's kind of like when you were young and your parents said, oh, in 3 more weeks we'll go on a picnic, or in 5 more weeks we'll go to Disney World. So you could hardly wait, and every day you marked on a calendar or you counted because it was so important to you. Similarly, when the Israelites were told that in 7 weeks they would get the Torah, the most precious gift on earth, they had to count the days. So that's another explanation for the counting of the Omer. All right? And I think it's only right Cantor should do the Omer because he does such a lovely job.
So today we are counting the day that is between the 8 and the 10. Okay?
Because you're not supposed to say the number until you make the bracha.
Yeah. Hineni mukhan uzuma, hineni mukhan uzuma, hineni תעשה על צבירת העומר, כמו שכתוב בתורה, הנני מוכן ומזומן, וספרתם לכם ממחרת השבת, הנני מוכן ומזומן, יום אביאכם את עומר הדלופה, הנני מוכן ומזומן. 7 שבתות דמים תהיינה, אז ממחרת השבת השביעית תספרו 50 יום. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו על ספירת העומר. היום 9 ימים שהם שבוע אחד ושני ימים לעומר. Today, this is the 9th 10 of the count of the Omer. That is a week and 2 days in the counting of the Omer.
Amen. Rahman hu yachzir lanu et avodat beit hamikdash l'mkomav b'mheira v'yameinu. May the Almighty soon return the temple service to its place speedily in our days. I will say Amen. And will this temple make animal offerings for the traditional Jews, or will this temple offer only prayer? And the answer is yes. Okay. Try to dodge those questions.
Page number 51, Alain.
Aleinu shabeach v'adon hakol, atem geulah yotzei bereshit, shelo asanu kegoyei haratzot, ולא שמענו במשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כעת, וגורלנו ככל עמוניו. אנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוצר הארץ, ומשה יקרו השמיים כמעט, שכינתו סוף, שכינתו סוף, בגובה מרומים. הוא אלוהינו ואלוהות, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום השבותה ולבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ יצחק עלינו. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, היום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. Right, if you sang Mourner's Cottage, please remain standing. And this morning we said goodbye to a very dear friend, Howard Lackman, Chaim Ben Moshe Miriam of blessed memory. And I also wanted to mention that if anyone has a yard site, if anybody has a name that they want us to mention before doing Kaddish, you can text me, you can text any of the temple leaders, well, we'll be glad to say the names for you. It's a very sad thing, but we're happy to do it. And I want to say that the Spiegel family is observing 2 yard sites. One is their son, Adam Matthew Hirsch. That was the 22nd of Nisan. And also a departed wife, who was the 24th of Nisan. And for the family we say, that the Almighty comfort you with the rest of the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem and the mourners Kaddish. Yadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah, Amen. V'yalma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon v'echon v'chayei t'chol beit Yisrael. Hagalau v'zman kariv v'yimru, Amen. Yehesh me'ra v'rach v'yam v'yam v'barach v'yishtabach v'yitpo'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudashah v'richu. Li'elam min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata. Da'amiran v'yalma v'yimru, Amen. Yehesh shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'morah. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael. V'yal ruya shvei tevel v'yimru, Amen. All right, you may be seated. And Cantor will lead us in the Adon Olam. All right. That's great. I have these little conversations with myself.
Okay. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yetzer nivra le'ed rasa v'cheso kol azay melech shemo nikra ve'acharei kiflot hakol levado yimlok nora ve'o haya ve'o ben ve'u yeh v'tifara ve'u echad ve'sheni ve'amshilo le'achvira ve'li reshit ve'li tachlit ve'lo ha'os ve'a'ezra ve'u eli ve'chai go'ali ve'tzurchemi ve'sara ve'onisei umanos ve'nat kosei ve'yom ekra ve'yado afked ruchi ve'tishon ve'aira ve'im ruchi geviati Adonai li ve'lo ira ve'im ruchi geviati Adonai li ve'lo ira.
All right, please rise for the closing benediction.
Yevarechecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha.
May the Lord bless you and keep you.
Yer Adonai panav elecha ve'ychuneka.
The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you.
Yisa Adonai panav elecha ve'yasem lecha shalom.
The Lord turn his face unto you and grant you peace. We wish you a Shabbat of peace. We wish for everyone's health. We especially want to thank our wonderful tech person,
MIT.
beyond measure, Doreen Christopher, who has the most elaborate set of pantomime gestures to let us know when we're doing the right thing. Thank you so much.
Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat, hey, Shabbat, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom.